Here at the Giver Marketing Network, we don't leave you drifting out in space. We connect you to a coach who will help you build and grow your marketing business. Our process acts as a guide on how to connect with other businesses, maintain good relations, and establish a presence on the Giver Marketing Network. Each member within this collaborative group will have the opportunity to leverage your talent and influence, a true network effect. If you are looking to collaborate on more projects, welcome to the Giver Marketing Network, the most trusted and highest rated collective of specialists on the planet. Here we have a group of like-minded professionals who focus on making valuable introductions and helping each other grow by teaming up. Imagine Upwork meets a network and a coach. The talent collectively includes services like visibility and SEO, creating logos, designing websites, managing social media, outreach messaging, visual storytelling, and much more. Think of what you could do with laser-focused allies strengthening your business while offering your talents to the entire network. Click near this video for more information.
Hello and welcome to another Tuesday marketing broadcast. I'm Christine Deane. I am the team director at Giver Marketing Network. And I love our Tuesdays because this is where we get to give back and just kind of give a hand to everybody out there that's working on their marketing. Marketing can get so confusing and so overwhelming. There's so many choices. And how do you know even where to start? So we always try and pick topics that are valuable to you. So if there's something that you've been wanting to know a little bit more about, reach out, let us know. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are because we just want to help lift you up. So I think today is going to be one of those days that you're really going to find extra value. Now, we do value every week. However, this is a topic that's been coming up with my clients. And so I was thinking, well, why don't we share this with the rest of y'all? So as part of our Giver Marketing family and network, we just wanted to let you know, we are working on some case studies right now. Some of my clients have come to me and said, Christine, I know I've got stuff. I don't even know where to start with it. So if you're not familiar with case studies, they can be really valuable. So I'm just going to dive right in and we're just going to have some fun today. So here we go. So let's talk a little bit about case studies. It's going to be like a crash course, let's say, kind of a beginning step. So if you haven't done a case study before, that's okay. We're going to talk about that. So I don't want you to feel lost, but really we want to look at what they are, why they work, and how to build them. So we're just going to take it super easy. I'm going to give you some samples as we go through. Once again, I said I'm Christine Deane, Team Director, Giver Marketing. I'm the founder of the Networking Diva. And really, it's all about building relationships and how to lift people up. So that's kind of my philosophy behind everything I do, especially when I'm working on your marketing and your business. I serve as an executive vice president over at momentumtech.ai. So I love the tech space. I'm a former college professor and directed the speech and debate team, an award-winning public speaker. So I love teaching. So we are in the right place because we're going to have some fun today. So as we dive in, right, we really want to take a look at what is a case study. Okay, we're going to go over some of the basics, kind of look at a real story with it, the anatomy behind every great case study. And then we'll dive into why case studies work, the trust stats, the psychology behind it, why they're the smartest marketing tools you're not using. Because you'd be surprised how many times you see testimonials, but a lot of times we don't necessarily see case studies. Then we're going to talk about how to build a case study persona. So we're going to go step by step and look at turning a real client into a reusable prompt. All right, so that being the case, let's just dive in deeper. Are you ready? So what exactly is a case study? I'm sure you've heard of it, but let's bust some myths. A lot of times we're thinking, oh, case studies are for those big companies, right? They've done big things and they have all these stats, and case studies don't have to be that complicated, and they don't have to be something that is only done by big business. This comes in handy for your consultants, your coaches, your small businesses, your solopreneurs, your nonprofits. You don't have to be a huge company in order to do case studies because you've done things that have had impact. And that's what we're talking about here. So why not showcase those? So let's dive in a little bit further. All right. So what is actually a case study? So it's a real story about a real person or business showing a problem, how it was solved, and the results, right? So basically, we're wanting to showcase what you do best, right? So your client had a problem, right? How you solved it, and the results, how the world's a better place now, right? So what challenges are your clients facing, right? That's kind of what you want to keep in mind. And so if you haven't done this before, feel free to pull out something to take notes with, right? So think about what are challenges that your clients are facing and the solution. So how did they solve it, right? How did you help them solve it, right? And then what changed as a result? What was the transformation, right? So pay attention to the success stories that you've been putting together with your clients, things that you've seen that have worked. Right? Keep those in the back of your mind while you're following through. So let's follow a real story. So this is the coach who almost gave up, right? He's from corporate success. He was struggling as an entrepreneur, though. He didn't have any sales, no marketing, no prospecting skills. He was on his own, no support. Does this sound familiar for some of the solopreneurs out there, right? Or anybody who's started a new business before? Maybe you've started a new nonprofit and you're like, oh man, yeah, this sounds familiar, right? So a lot of times that's what happens. We start out and we don't know where to start, right? So this is the kind of story that becomes a great case study. So if you're working with somebody and you're helping them and this is where they started, right? This is a great opportunity to do a case study. So follow through the steps, right? Follow their journey, document their journey, right? The problem is, you might leave a successful corporate career to become a coach. You might have corporate experience, but it doesn't always translate to being on your own, right? You're missing a lot of steps in that. And we see this all the time as we see people are like, I'm done with being 9 to 5 business. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a consultant. I want to do it on my own, right? So this is a lot of times is what we see is people trying to transition, but they don't know what they don't know. And so when they jump in, they get kind of lost and overwhelmed, right? So maybe they don't have the sales skills, the prospecting skills, the marketing skills, right? So whatever it is that you do for businesses, that you help them, if you're a help a business kind of person, a B2B space, right? Whatever it is that you do that helps businesses survive or get out of that struggle spot into more of a successful spot, right? That's the problem that you solve. Right. So here with this coach, that's what we're looking at, right? So the solution, right, was the coach got a coach, right? So they were a consultant and they said, oh man, I need a coach, right? They practiced what they preached and they focused on the skills that were missing, right? So the sales, the goal setting, the communication, right? Putting systems in place. So they needed a way to build a system. And since they'd never done it before, right, they needed to have someone else come in and give them a hand. So that's exactly what they did is they brought somebody in to give them a hand. Okay. So the results, right? So we talked about the problem, the solution, and then the results, right? So the $6,000 a month within 30 days, 26,000 within 5 months, right? So these are skills that would serve them for their entire career, right? So this is coming from business coach Dan, right? So this is a real story that we brought in. And so we see this all over the place. So that's a great case study. Right. So the anatomy of a case study is every case study has the who, right? A real person, real business that's struggling, right? The problem, whatever that challenges is. And then the solution, what actually solved the problem, and the results, the measurable outcome. So you want to make sure when you're thinking about what have I done for my clients that have been so successful, right? Where did they start? Who did I help? Right? Narrow that down, who they really are, right? What problem did I solve for them? And then what was that solution that worked for them? And then what was the aha at the end, those great results that they had? So this is where you can pull in your stats, where you can see the number difference. Did they increase sales? Did they get more conversions? What is it that you did that helped them? And what was the result of that in the end, right? So this works. It's a real story, right? It's not something made up that AI made up. It wants to be something that you've actually done, right? It builds trust through proof, right? And something that's relatable to your audience. And it pretty much does the selling for you. And that's the beauty of a case study, right? We talk about proof, right? It's proof. This is what's happened. This is what I've done successfully with somebody to help them. This is your social proof, which can be very powerful. So we looked at what the case study is. That's a real story that builds trust. It follows a simple structure, the who, the problem, the solution, the results, right? It works for businesses of every size, not just big companies, right? And our coach's story, well, that's a case study in the making, right? So let's dive in and take a look at the next step. So why case studies work? You're like, okay, we've seen big businesses do it. We know they can be successful with it, but what's it all about? Right? So why? Why does it work so well? Well, let me tell you. Okay, people don't trust ads, right? They trust other people. And case study is like your ultimate testimonial. Right. So this is the foundation of everything that we're going to be talking about. So 92% of consumers trust recommendations from others over advertising. Right? It is absolutely. Oh, here we go. We've got people coming in, chiming in. Peyton, you are absolutely right. Social proof is probably the most powerful tool. Right. And the case study is just another way to do that. And that's what we want to make sure we've got, right? There's no reason to just leave that for the big businesses when the solopreneurs and the small businesses can be taking advantage of the same kind of social proof that the large businesses are, right? So it's not about friends and family. It's about anyone that has shared a real experience, a review, a blog post, a story, right? That's the beginning of your case study, right? So you're pulling that in with more details. Right? Case study, it's a recommendation. You're not creating an ad. You're packaging a real person's real experience. It does the trust building work for you, even when you're not in the room, right? So for a moment, take a moment and think about it. With for example, your LinkedIn, do you have a case study saved as one of your featured items on there? No? Do you have one on your website? Even one, right? So think about that, right? What do I have? Have I been using things? Okay, do you have some testimonials, right? Is it something that you can go deeper into and maybe turn from just a simple testimonial into an actual case study, right? So start thinking about those kinds of ideas. All right, now case studies, they work across the board, right? 75% of B2B marketers use case studies. When I say B2B, we mean business to business. Right, 53% say they produce the best results out of any content they have. Right, so whether you're selling products or services, whether you're business to business or B2C, which is business to consumer, case studies work. Right, so if you're thinking, will this work for my business? Yes, it will. Okay, so start thinking about what might work for you. Right, so where they hit the hardest, when we say that, when it comes to case studies, where do they have the most impact? Okay, so the consideration phase of the buyer's journey, right? There's a whole buyer's journey. They don't just walk in usually and go, 30 seconds into it going, and I want that now, right? Some people do, but most of the time there's a process where we're thinking, we're researching, right? We're going through all the phases before we actually get to the purchase phase. So when they're considering, what they want, where they want, those case studies can really come in handy. So someone has already decided that they have the problem. You're not trying to convince them there's a problem. They already know it. And they're actively comparing solutions. They're saying, well, should I do this? Should I do that? Right. And so let's say they go to 3 different websites to solve their problem. And they're looking at what different people are offering. Right. But one of them has a case study on it that shows exactly, clearly what the problem was. And they go, oh, that was my problem. Oh, this was their solution, and this was the results of it. Oh, I like that. It makes it so concrete and hands-on. It makes it really easy, and it's selling for you. Right? So that case study is the most powerful thing you can put in front of them at that point. Right? They're actively involved. They're looking for a reason to say yes because they already know they have the problem. So if you don't have your case study front and center for them to find easily, whether it's on your LinkedIn, whether it's in your marketing in your social media, whether you've got it on your website, right? There's places you can use it, blog posts, whatever it is you want to do with it, but use them. Absolutely use them. They're going to make a difference, right? So that coach's turnaround story, that's the case study. If you could attract his next client by saying, this is what happens, it just makes sense, right? So the myths we need to bury, right? You don't need a big budget. You don't need a big company. You need perfect results, right? So you have to have something that you can showcase, right? And you need a marketing team, or do you? So one of the things we could talk about is how to get around not having that large marketing team for this. So they say you need, but you don't, okay? Because I love working with the small businesses and the solopreneurs. So I like to give you all sorts of really good ideas that you can kind of do without the large marketing team. And when you get to the point where you can outsource and you've got the funds for it, sure, absolutely bring in your marketing team. But we all start somewhere with a small business, right? These are great. Here we go. I'm going to pop this up. Peyton's talking about, what about LinkedIn recommendations? That kind of social proof. It absolutely is, right? And that's what we're talking about. You want that social proof. It really makes a difference wherever you can collect those, right? Case study is just one more type. So really important, right? So I want you to think about one story. That's all you need to start with, right? Solopreneurs can use these every day. Okay? The real results, any size, are going to help build that trust. And you just need the right prompt. So we'll talk about that later too. Okay, so if we recap, right? 92% of consumers trust recommendations over ads. Case study is a recommendation, packaged and ready to go, looking beautiful, right? They influence decisions at every stage, but we know it's really important at that spot where they're trying to consider which option they want to run with, right? And they work for businesses of every size and every industry. So yes, this is for you, okay? Let's talk about how to create that case study though. Thinking, oh man, I don't even know where to start. It's okay. We're going to walk through it together. Right. So the problem with writing case studies is most people know they need one. They sit down and they're like, I don't even know where to start. Right. You don't know who they're writing for. They don't know what tone to use. They don't know what to include or leave out. Is this sounding familiar? It's probably one of the reasons why you haven't done it yet. Right. And I get it. I really do. Right. But you don't actually need to write it yourself. You just need to build a prompt that will do it for you. Right? You need a prompt that tells your AI exactly who your client is, what their brand sounds like, who they serve, what kind of stories to tell and how to tell them. And once it's built, you can generate case studies instantly. You need to tweak everything as with AI, right? Nothing comes out perfect, but it gives you a starting block, right? It's a lot easier to edit something usually than it is to come up with it from scratch. So when we think about your ideal client, and like I said, I want you to start thinking about, how do you help them? We always say, I serve who, right? That's your client. And then, how do you serve them, right? So think about that. Start making a list of how you're helping them and what you might use for your case studies. Right? So start making those kind of notes. This way you don't get overwhelmed trying to do it all at once. All right. Think about who it is that you've helped recently that maybe wrote you a testimonial. Maybe go look at your Google reviews. Right? See somebody that gave you some verbal feedback. Ask them if they'd be willing to put that into a video, because we like social proof. Right? But take it and dive deeper with it. It's the extra details that make a difference. So I'm going to give you an example today. So meet Lisa Hammett. She's actually one of my clients, and she is phenomenal. Right? Success coach based in McKinney, Texas. She's a certified PQ coach and burnout expert, keynote, TEDx speaker, author. She's our case study. She doesn't know she's my case study today, so feel free to give her a shout out if you know her. She'll know soon enough, because I'm going to hand her a goodie out of this. All right. So before we start building, right, we're going to think about three main questions. So who is your client, right? Their brand, voice, and identity. Okay. So stop for a moment. Now your client, and if you have multiple products and multiple services, you may have a different ideal client for each of those. So I'm going to pause a moment, let that sink in. Okay. So your ideal client, you probably have a different ideal client depending on which product or service it is. For example, I mentioned that I work with momentumtech.ai. And so we have multiple products. One is geared towards business owners that you want to use multiple prompts, right, to help with your business. Another one is Magic Kids, which is actually for children. So two completely different audiences, except that we're probably appealing to the parents to use it with their children, right? But still, right, the goal is completely different. The approach is going to be different. The brand's going to be just a little bit different. The voice, the identity, all of that is going to be just a little bit different depending on who that is that your client is that you're trying to reach out to, right? For our children's products, it's more playful, more fun, different kind of color scheme, a little bit brighter. So think about that. So for each of your products, your major services, right, is the same client across all of them. And if not, you might want to kind of separate that. So you kind of have an idea in your mind how to differentiate how you're going to do the case study, because the case study is probably going to be different. You're probably going to need more than one. You probably need more than one for each of those products or services. Okay. So who's your client serve audience and the problems they solve, right? So we want to think about what they do, what you do, right? We got to tie it all together. So how you're going to help them do their job better, right? And how do they want their story told, right? The format, the tone, the narrative style. And this is important because that's big on your brand and what makes sense for you. So as we put this together, there's all sorts of, we're only in the first three, right? So when we take this and we apply it to Lisa, though, her brand voice, right? Her brand identity, she's a success coach. She's a certified coach, right? Burnout mindset expert, keynote author, right? Mental fitness coach. These are all part of her brand identity. So it needs to shine through. These are the things that she does. Right? When we look at the voice and the tone, right? It's warm, it's empowering, it's approachable, right? Knowledgeable, but not preachy, right? Encouraging without being toxic positive, right? Grounded, real, right? What's our core message, right? Burnout isn't a flaw in you. It's a flaw in the system you've been carrying, right? You deserve to lead from a place of balance, not depletion. You're like, okay, so we want to make sure that when we're putting together a case study that comes through, right? Because that's what's going to relate to her audience, right? So her location, she's in McKinney. However, she works all over the place because she can work online, right? Specializing in leaders navigating those burnouts, transitions, and redefining what success looks like. So once it understands the persona and who she is, now you can use that as the lens in which to view everything after that. So you have to take the time to build out whoever it is that we're doing this for. So if it's for you, right, go and build out your persona. Right. So when we talk about the services and audience, right? So her flagship services, Burnout to Best Life, Next Chapter, Leadership Reset. She's working on a cohort right now. It's a 4-week virtual group, right? So we want to make sure that that's part of the solution, right? So if she's going to do some kind of case study, she's probably going to pull the case study out of that. And I know she is, right? So when she can highlight, she's got her solution. That flagship service, right, is her solution or one of her solutions, right? So she's got different times, her target audience for this, right? So she's going to want a case study that she showcases that shows somebody going through her program successfully and what they got out of the end, right? So she's basing this whole program off of her latest book, right? Sustainable Strategies for a Healthy Mind and Body. So as you're putting your case study together, you want to start thinking about, okay, what services, right? Who am I serving? What do I need to highlight in order for them to go, aha, yes, this describes me. I can relate to this, right? So the writing guidelines, you got to make sure when you're building out your persona, not only do you have your information about your services and how you help people and who you are and your persona, but you need to highlight the writing guidelines and formulas so that it knows what to follow, right? So some of the things to highlight, the preferred formats, right? The narrative structure. So when we build out it, right? It says lead with the leader's struggle, right? So it's something that the leader can read this case study and go, oh yeah, that's me. I recognize that. I have that problem, right? Introduce the shift in the mindset, show the transformation, then close with the empowerment and the, right? So these are all things you want to keep in mind when you're putting together these case studies, because they need to be something that really relates to your audience. Your ideal client should go, yes, 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 I have to talk to this person because they understand my struggles. They understand how to solve them, right? So never shame the reader. Yeah, those are good rules, right? Validate the exhaustion first, right? For this one, we're going to position Lisa as a guide, not a guru, right? Keeping it real and keeping it hopeful. So you're giving your persona the directions on what it's supposed to think about and follow while it's building your case study for you. All right. So narratives and closing, right? So the story angle. So pulling in stories are going to be important, especially if they're dealing with overwhelm and burnout, right? So we want to make sure the case study has a story element to it, right? The hook, how do we grab their attention, right? So hers would have a certain hook. They could say, oh, wow, yes, right? The closing element reinforcing that it's not their fault and that they can get help, right? How do we want them to solve their problem? Well, we want them to hire her, right? So think of that, right? That's your case study format, right? And confidentiality. If you're working in a field where you need to be careful with confidentialities, for example, I've got a client that is a acupuncturist, right? And so patient HIPAA compliance, all that kind of stuff. So you're going to want to make sure that you're very careful to follow those rules and put that into your directions for your prompt. Right? Otherwise, you're going to run into problems. Right? So when we put it all together, right, you're building the persona, you're feeding it to the AI, and you're generating it and then customizing it from there. I mean, it's a lot, but if the AI is doing the work, and let's see if we can do a quick demo and show you something in action. I was working on one of these with my acupuncturist. And so, there's a lot of AIs out there. There's a lot of ways that you can run it, and you can use the AI of your choice in order to build one of these out. Magi is one of my favorites for that. So I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share on that. So let's see, share screen, and I'm going to take you with me. I think this is the right one. This is where it's nice to have somebody in the room that can tell you, yes, that's the right one. I think that's it right there. Okay, I'm going to zoom in really good on it so you guys can actually read it, because otherwise that's just way too small, right? So let's zoom in as much as we can without losing it. Okay, here we go. Is that a little bit better? Can we actually read that now? It's still getting better, right? So let me see if I can bloom it in just a little bit more. So what I did is I pulled into Magi, and Magi has personas. So if we go, that's getting pretty big right there. Okay. So one of the personas in Magi, you can actually do, there's a persona generator that Dustin Stout and Magi has already created. So you can choose that. And I like the latest Claude versions are my favorite to play with when it comes to writing. And so when you choose, right, and you choose your drop down, you're going to choose that Claude persona, or Claude as your language model. And then the persona is the generator. So for this, if we're going to generate a persona, right, I literally opened it up and I told it, well, we need a persona for writing audience-friendly case studies for our acupuncturist. Now, one of the cool things about Magi also is there's a workspace. So we've already got their brand built into it. So we didn't have to give quite as much details on that because it already knew it. So I love that quality about it. But that's how we started. When you've got a personas whose whole job is to help you build your persona, it makes it so much easier. So see how fast this is. So I told it we need a persona to write friendly case studies for our acupuncturist. And Clyde told us, yeah, we'd be glad to help, right? So if you're familiar with Scott Gralla Acupuncture in New York, and this is all about him, we put this together. So it asked, well, what do you need? Could you provide any additional context? So we went through and we said, okay, well, so target audience specifics. Are they case studies for potential patients, referring physicians, insurance companies, or a mix, right? So it had some questions for us. What are the tone preferences, privacy compliance, right? Length and format. So it added a few questions for us. So it got us off to the right start. How much storytelling should be? Is there a narrative perspective to it? How much clinical detail should we have? We said, okay, so let's talk about that. So it walked us through the steps, literally. So we went through and we answered the questions, right? So we want it primarily for potential clients, right? So patients, tone preference, educational, inspirational, slightly clinical, but not too clinical because you don't want to lose everybody. We want it to be conversational, easy to understand, right? Yes, we need to follow the HIPAA requirements, right? Length and format should be able to create a short testimonial style for social media. We want our persona to be able to create the longer form deep dives for blogs and scripts for video, right? So we literally had a way that we wanted to use these case studies. So we told it what we wanted, right? Key outcomes to highlight. So acupuncture, of course, you focus on pain relief, lifestyle changes, holistic wellness, right? Specific conditions treated. So these are the kinds of things that we want it to focus on when it's writing the case studies, right? Distribution, we're going to end up putting it on a website, a social media, it might be in emailed and newsletters, print materials, it might go into pamphlets. So it kind of knows how we're going to use it, and tell it to use a storytelling element, right? And clinical detail, we want a little bit more human. So it literally created for us our prompt that we can now use to create any case study for them. So you tell the persona that you're creating, right? You are now a compassionate healthcare storyteller specializing in creating patient case studies for Scott Garla Acupuncture LLC, right? A holistic wellness practice in Green Lawn, New York. Right? Your mission is to craft engaging, authentic case studies that inspire potential patients while honoring privacy and showcasing the transformative power of acupuncture and complementary therapies, right? So it built out the brand voice for us. It built out the services that we want to feature, right? So the different services that he has, the writing guidelines, right? What those rules are and how we want it to. Example, we want to use a descriptor, but change the name, right? Remove any identifying details for the person. Don't include actual photos or specific dates. Add disclaimers. Right? Audience tone, writing for potential patients, right? Who are curious, perhaps skeptical, or seeking alternatives. Right. So we wanted to balance kind of education, inspiration, conversational elements. Right. The format, we want it to be flexible. Right. So the guidelines, if we want to tell it, we want a social media post, well, we want it to be between 150 to 300 words. We gave it the directions. It's supposed to have a punchy opening, a quick problem solution result, an emotional hook, and a call to action. So anytime we tell it, hey, I need, here's the story, here's the case study that I'm working on, and I need something for social media, it knows exactly what we're looking for. All right, we're giving it the rules for if we ask it to write a blog or a long form, we want it to be 600 to 1200. So this is, all this came straight out of the persona writer in here. I mean, how cool is that, right? It literally gave us all the details. So we can take this, and no matter what you decide to use it with, if you're a chat GPT kind of person, or if you have something else that you prefer to use, you can take this persona and these directions and work with it and to create your case studies, right? Here's the outcomes that we want to highlight, right? These are the things that the clients are going to be looking for in those case studies. So we want to make sure that's in there, right? Content elements to include. It's pretty amazing that all this popped out. The language guidelines, what your voice should sound like, taking out the jargon, using a little bit easier language for people to understand, right? Closing elements, that call to action, right? So not only that, it also added a process for us, right? Ask the user what format they need. So if you build this into your persona, it literally will ask you every time you open it, okay, what format do you need? Right? So it's ready to help. So request the key details. So it's going to ask for the patient's channel, the treatment use, the outcomes. And that's specifically for this, right? Because it's acupuncture. For you, it would ask for something different, right? Based on your services. Right? Clarify target length, if not specified. Draft the case study, right? Include the privacy disclaimers, offer to revise. Right? Every case study should make potential patients think, that sounds like me. Maybe an acupuncture could help, while showcasing, right, your expertise, compassion, practices, welcoming, empowering approach. I mean, how cool is that? That you can then take that with you wherever you go and whatever LLM you want to use. This is how simple, right? We went through all these details on how to create this and how complicated it could be. But look how much easier it became when you start bringing in the element with AI. I love this kind of stuff. When you can come up with things that help your business, when you can find those repetitive tasks and you can find a way to bring AI into that just to make things a little bit easier on you, why not? So as long as we're being ethical about it, as long as we're using truthful case studies, as long as we're pulling out examples that where we've actually genuinely helped people, right? Showcase that, let people know about it. So this was a great, just diving into the whole idea of case studies. So I'm thinking if you're not feeling overwhelmed at this point and you're like, that AI thing, and if you want to talk to me about it, I would love to help you with that. There are, wrong one. Let's pull in this one, right? So we did our demo, right? this is my information to reach out. So if you want to talk to me about case studies and you're like, man, that looks like fun, but I'm not really comfortable with AI enough to be able to do that on my own, but I'd love to learn how, right? Reach out. Let's have a conversation. Let me give you a hand with that. This is an opportunity for you to use the same marketing techniques and what's helping with the large businesses and apply it to a smaller business. You don't have to be a large business in order to do this. So if this is something you want to add to your plan for your marketing and for your business, if you don't already have one, right, let's have a conversation about it. Or if you want to just watch the video again and follow through, that's great too. If you have Magi, I just showed you how to do that. You can probably do that elsewhere with the other LLMs. That's just my favorite playground for building personas, just because it's got that persona generator in there. It makes it nice and easy. If you don't have that and you want me to help you do that, let me know. But this is an opportunity. You don't want to miss this opportunity because, like we said, social proof is huge. So if you have an opportunity to add one more level of social proof, it's going to help that you can use in multiple avenues, whether that's your website, whether it's your LinkedIn profile, whether you're posting it on Facebook, whether it's a blog you're going to turn it into, whether you want to put it in your pamphlets and your informationals when you send it out to clients. Right? There's so many different ways that you can use it. Start with one and then just keep building from there. Build the next one. Use it so that you've got case studies for all of your different products, all of your different services. Right? Use this to really prove your success stories, how you've managed to help people with your business. So show them that you can be that valuable person in their network that can really help them just advance to that next level in their business. So hopefully you found that helpful today. That was my goal, was to kind of help you be more competitive, whether that you're that small business, a nonprofit, whatever it is that you do. I want you to be more competitive. I want you to be able to make money doing what you love best. So hopefully that's why you're in business or why you're volunteering or why you're working and leading a nonprofit, whatever it is that you do, I want you to be able to do more of it. So reach out anytime. Once again, I'm Christine Deane, Team Director at Giver Marketing Network. And if I can't help you, I know someone who can, because we've got about 200 marketers in there. So if you need help with something, reach out and I'll either give you a hand or I'll put you in touch with the right person. And we do this broadcast every Tuesday. And not only that, but Wednesdays are networking for marketers. Let me pull that up real quick. So networking for marketers, we meet Wednesdays, 8 a.m. Pacific, 10 Central, which is Texas, which is where I'm at, 11 Eastern. But go to givermarketing.com/networking and you can sign up, come hang out with us. That's another one of our give backs. We just want to bring together, if you're a marketer, if you're a social media person, if you are a media, right? Any of those spaces, it doesn't matter, PR, come hang out with us. Don't be a lonelypreneur. We love teaming up with other marketers. So hopefully you've learned something today, and I'll see you again either tomorrow at Networking for Marketers, or I will see you next Tuesday for our broadcast. Talk soon. Thanks.